You got to unmute yourself, though. That's the deal. You have to unmute yourself if we're going to have a conversation. He's not buying it. All right, I'm going to go. I'm going to jump into tournament. So what we're hoping to do, so we have three different sports that we are welcoming down for this tournament for next July 2021. We have young women's volleyball, we have young women's softball, and we have young women's basketball. And those three are all beloved sports. I think when one thinks of the Dominican Republic, you tend to think about baseball, but I'll tell you that softball is when it comes to on the ground in Dominican Republic, softball is a much wider played sport. Volleyball, I would say volleyball is probably the number one, the number one growing sport for young women in Dominican Republic. We've had a very impressive showing in the past couple Olympics for just a tiny little Caribbean nation. And I put basketball right behind volleyball. So they are beloved sports here. We have a fantastic complex in Santo Domingo, which is the nation's capital. If you get an opportunity, you haven't done it yet, I highly recommend that you look at a map before you come down here. For no other reason that you should know which direction you need to walk to get to the ocean. So right in Santo Domingo, which is the nation's capital, we have approximately, let's say, 11 million people in the country, and we've got about 5 million of those people in Santo Domingo, so it's a big Latin American city. And right kind of not too far from the ocean, kind of right central in the middle of the city is what's called Centro Olímpico, which is a giant multi-sports complex that houses everything, both indoor and outdoor, everything from baseball, softball, volleyball, swimming, soccer, chess, judo, darts. It's anything that can be a sport and be practiced is found at that complex, and that is part of the government's infrastructure. Really cool to have all of those sports within one central area. It is, for me, regardless of what I go there for, which tends to be volleyball, basketball, or softball, and baseball. Swing a little boys baseball in there. I love just walking through there and seeing literally thousands of young people all in one place in the name of sport. It's a great place to meet people, a great place to practice your Spanish, and a great place to let others practice their English on you. So a great place to kind of come into contact with Dominican Republic. Our intention is that each team is going to play 6 games, and that the way that format will come to fruition is that the teams will be divided into different pools, and then we'll play games in those pools to find where they're seated, and then we will have elimination from those seeding. And our intention is you have at least 6 games, maybe more if things get really nuts. We'll see how that goes. This is something we were just talking about today, is what is the maximum number of games that you might play in a day? And I'll be honest with you, Briggs says you can handle 4. I would say that 3 sounded more reasonable, but we'll see how it goes. The format of the program is that we're looking, this is a multi-city program. So the first part of the program, let's say the first half, is very sport and competition oriented, and that all takes place down in Santo Domingo. And once we complete that part of the program, then we head up to the North Coast, having some fun along the way. And the North Coast is where we begin, I'd say, to explore a little bit more of, I guess, the adventure and relaxation side of what Dominican Republic has to offer. Now, everyone has, I'm sure, heard about our Dominican beaches, of which we have a few, something like 1,200 miles of beaches. But there's much more here than that. We have 5 mountain ranges, 3 peaks over 10,000 feet. There's a lot to see between the South Coast and the North Coast, and you will see it all. Because as I said, we're going to start in Santo Domingo on the South Coast, where we're focusing on the competition part of the program, and then we cruise all the way, bisect the country to the North Coast, and that's where we're doing things like cascading along the way, and we have a surfing opportunity. We have a cool river trip and beach bonfire opportunity going up there, and our service as well. Great. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself first.
I got it this time. Thank you.
All
I'm a
right.
slow learner.
No problem. Let me ask you, would you want me to slow down? Is there something you want to focus on in terms of Santo Domingo? I didn't mention, let me ask a question on your behalf to myself. I didn't talk about accommodations. I can't get too specific on exactly what the accommodations are because we're looking to see what are the best options as we draw closer. But we pretty much have two properties that we are negotiating and looking at. And if you feel like looking into that and researching at least the kind of quality and location that we're looking for, I can tell you one of those properties is called La Catalonia, which begins with a C, Catalonia. And that's, there are a couple of those in the country, but look for the one in Santo Domingo. And the other one is called the Barceló, which is located right across the street from Centro Olímpico. So if you're interested and curious about the kind of places we might stay while we're in Santo Domingo, that will give you a sense of that. Now, Britt, do you have any other questions?
So, no, I think you hit on it because, again, I think the kids, they're used to playing, 3 and 4 games in a day. Now, they're not used to playing 3 or 4 games in a day underneath the Dominican sun. So so that's something that we need to take into account. But, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I feel like you guys will be just fine competing, because you guys are used to competing all day at tournaments here. So I think you guys will be just fine there. But yeah, as far as, how the tournament goes, it'll be, half American teams, half Dominican teams. And again, we want to make sure that each team gets a minimum of 6 games. And like Richard said, if it gets a little crazy, maybe more. So, and I'm really excited about getting that Centro Olímpico feel because we want to create that Olympic style atmosphere where you guys as softball players and volleyball players and basketball, you're getting to intermingle with other basketball players and, other sports along with your own too. So we want to create that Olympic style atmosphere. So, and then I think that's probably good on the tournament. Why don't you highlight the different service projects that we're going to do while we're down there too?
Sure. Service we are going to focus on while we're on the North Coast. And let me just take a moment to speak about service. And people have all sorts of different ideas of what that is. So let me tell you what that means to us. A number of years ago, we moved away from things like painting classrooms or building fences. We moved away from those kinds of things, because to be absolutely frank and honest with you, Dominicans don't need unskilled North American teens to come down and build them fences or paint their schoolrooms. They can do that themselves. So when we're talking about service, we're focusing on things, on qualities and skills that are unique to you. And a big part of that is your education and your influence as a North American. We will be dealing with, in part of our service time down here, some marginalized, and some other words we use are disenfranchised, or a more common term might be at-risk youth. Now, these are youth that tend to live in impoverished areas or have, let's say, less than ideal infrastructure, be it educational or in general, any kind of infrastructure. So what we try to use is the knowledge you have, and to be able to share with them. And on some levels, the easiest level might be you all assisting maybe in an English class, or just helping some young Dominican youth learn to speak English or make their English better. But it's really, what I want to get away from is the notion that service is all about helping. Because helping seems kind of one-sided, and we're really interested is we are interested in making an exchange of service and a sharing of yourself. So what we're going to be doing is partnering with an organization called Dream Project, which is, and Heather, just for you, Heather Collins, I'm going to write Dream Project in here. Heather's the one who asked me to name those hotels for you in Santo Domingo. So Dream Project is our service partner. And you can look up Dream Project, I believe. Let me just, before I give you a false Dominican Dream, yeah. Before I give you a false URL, let's make sure I got it right here. So Dream's URL is DominicanDream.org. This is a killer organization that I've been a partner with since the early 2000s. So Dream is Dominican Republic Education and Mentoring Project. And they focus on bolstering education on the north coast of the Dominican Republic. They touch something like 17,000 youth in their programs. One of the programs in particular that is special to us is called Única. Única, which means unique in Spanish. But the Única program focuses on young teen and preteen women in the communities, training youth to become leaders to then go out and train more youth. So Única, and if you look up on Dream Project, you should be able to find that in the What We Do program, and I believe it is one of the, yeah, it comes in under the What We Do in the community programs. And I believe it falls under the category called Luceros. And if you want to look that up, that's something you can research. But we'll start the beginning of our day at Dream Project, and we're going to start with a quick meeting with one of the administrators there to get an idea of what is the education system like in the Dominican Republic. Because before you can begin to serve, one must understand. And there are many different proverbs like, one of my favorite ones is, if you, walking in someone else's moccasins or something like that. But we need to get to understand who somebody is and what they're about before we can try to lend a helping hand or make any kind of suggestions at all. So we need to learn about the educational system in the Dominican Republic and essentially why does Dream Project exist? Why does a NGO need to exist to help bolster public education in the Dominican Republic? So we do that. Get a tour of the Dream Project facility in the school there. Then we'll divide up and we're going to go off with some of those young women, teen leaders that I was talking about. And they're going to show us how they reach out in the community and try to kind of capacitate and train us in this quick and dirty training. Then we'll break up and have lunch with them, local Dominican lunch in the barrio. And then we'll actually get to go out and work a little bit with some of the young women youth that they work with in the community as well, and kind of put some polish on some of those newfound skills. So the service you're providing is helping provide some new leadership opportunities, and also, to be honest with you, attract some attention because having you all come in, it validates not just Dream Project and what they're doing in these communities that we'll be working in, but it validates the lives of these at-risk youth. And that is perhaps the greatest service that you will be providing. Many of them are living conditions that are somewhat forgotten by the Dominican government. And so merely by your presence, you're helping lift them up. And that's a big part of what we do. Good? Questions on that, Bird?
Let me unmute myself.
Thank you.
No, I can't think of anything that you left out about the Dream Project. And then, I guess the other one is, helping the folks out in the dump. I know that's been really impactful for, for myself personally and, the kids too. And I think it's really, I think it's impactful to get past where you're at, meaning, being up to your knees and elbows in garbage, but just and you really can't understand that until you're up to your knees and elbows in garbage. But I think that's really important to focus on. You know, again, you do a great job of communicating the value that we provide, because it's not picking up extra cans and extra, you know, Coke bottles. It's that sense of hope. So, you know, if you want to share a little bit about that.
Sure. I'll try to undo the damage you've just done by telling people they're going to be up to their elbows and knees in garbage.
I don't want to lie to them.
Although not completely untrue. But what you do bring up a point is there is what you're actually physically doing, and there is what it means. And I kind of alluded to that a little bit to what we're going to be doing in Dream Project. Like what you're actually doing is going to a school and you're spending some time with some youth. But what it really means is a validation of who they are as people. So I talked about marginalized populations, disenfranchised, and at-risk youth. People who basically aren't able to enjoy some of the very basic civil benefits that we enjoy as North American citizens. So the dump, which I don't know if any of you have been to a dump before, but the dump is where all the garbage goes. Like when you put it out in front of you in a plastic bag out in your front on the end of your driveway, that's where it goes. And so the people who work in the dump are not necessarily, they're the hardest working, but yet poorest jobs, because it's very unpleasant. So what we're doing is we go out there and we kind of get into groups of 2, 3, and 4, and we pair up with individuals. We have no formal recycling program in the Dominican Republic, so we don't have a formal, like, where the government helps, like, recycle plastics. But we do have recycling programs, but it's privatized. So individuals who work in the dump go through and they find the plastic bottles or glass bottles or cardboard, whatever they happen to be collecting, and they are paid. If you've ever heard about people who make $1 or $2 a day, like, who are these people that you hear about around the world? It's these individuals, these kinds of people who live on the outskirts of a society. And what we'll be doing is pairing up and helping them just make their day a little bit easier by helping them find whatever they're looking for. So that's the actual activity that you are doing. Now, what it means is much more than that, because you'll find very quickly that you're not very skilled in finding plastic bottles, and they're really good at it. But again, what I want to touch on is we are validating the lives of other individuals. The vast majority of the individuals working in the dump and that privatized recycle sector are stateless. Now, this might be something you're familiar with as a term. If it's not something that you understand immediately, I'm going to ask that you spend some time, and I'm going to put that word right there out there. Spend some time understanding what does statelessness means. And I want you to imagine a world where you do not have a birth certificate and you are not tied to a country. You are not protected by the police, nor are you protected from the police. And you do not enjoy some of the basic services that one enjoys when they're tied to a state. So these are undocumented individuals who are invisible in the eyes of governments. So our presence validates their life. And that is just the beginning of what we're doing there. Before we head out there, we do kind of a really solid orientation that explains why we do this or why we think this is the right way to do this. But basically, what we're trying to really introduce you is some very powerful subjects of statelessness, immigration, institutional poverty, racism. These are some hot topics that have a lot to do with the reason that we're there and what our presence there means to these people. So that's not a light way to end this conversation, but it's, as Briggs said, it's a very powerful experience. We've been doing this now for 10 years. I don't know, Brig. At least 10 years. We've been using that experience in the dump as a stepping off point for young women to understand some of these topics. You know, it's just the beginning of understanding. But so despite Briggs selling it as up to your elbows in garbage, if it was not something that was so powerful and consistently evaluated as the single most important thing that our passengers have done, our players have done when they come down here. Apart, including the games, more important than the games has been that experience. So that's why we include it.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. So I guess what we'll do to close up here is, we're going to have these, Dominican specific Zoom calls, every so often. And for the next one, and again, I'll email all of this stuff to you guys too, is we want to hear from you guys. What questions do you guys have? That way we'll take all those questions ahead of time and make sure we have all of the answers to what you guys want to find out. So that's what we'll do next time. But Richard, do you have anything you want to close with tonight?
Sure. I would not be surprised if some of the words that I've said are surprising to you. I think that if I were to go back and watch this and keep track, I think you'd see that I probably spend maybe 30% of my available time talking about sports. That is what you're coming down here for, is sports and competition. But it's so much more than that. What we're doing down here is so much more than that. And I've been talking here for like half an hour. I haven't even talked about the beach yet. But I think that if you can begin to appreciate it, yes, we're coming down here under the guise of sports, but we are doing so much more for ourselves and for others at the same time, and having fun.
Well, great. Well, hey, thank you guys so much for being on here tonight. Again, I'm going to send this meeting out to all the Dominican folks, all 197 of you guys that are scheduled to go down there. So I'll send this out in an email tomorrow, and then we'll get together another time and we'll shoot an email out to you guys to find out what questions do you guys have. That way Richard and I can be prepared and get you all that information. But I guess with that, I'll wish everybody a good night and happy Monday.
Thank you.